How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and welcome to 2018. We got a brand new year, but it feels like we have some of the same old articles. This one is not quite the same as previous ones because this article, you see the headline on the screen before you. We were wrong about stop and frisk. Of course, that's a practice in New York where you might just get stopped randomly, patted down, just make sure you don't have any guns or drugs on you. This was implemented during Giuliani, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm wrong about that, let me know in the comments below, and it was continued thereafter. But it has pretty much been stopped. I'm not sure if it's totally been stopped, but it's been dramatically reduced, if not stopped. Now, the reason why this article is the same but not the same is because it's attacking a conservative principle, a crime-fighting principle, something that works. But this is from the National Review. Now, these guys I'm not really sure about. They purport themselves to be conservative, but every now and again, they do something very liberal. Most notably during the election, they were very anti-Trump. They had this letter by different people. It was like, it wasn't just one letter. It was multiple letters written by different people that are supposed to be conservative against Trump. It was very strange. If I could find that, I'll put that in the description box below. I did a video about it back when it happened, but this here is kind of along their lines, but not quite. We're going to go ahead and jump into it. I've skimmed through the article a little bit. I've not read the entire thing, but I have seen a couple of the comments, and we're going to get to those after we get done with the article. Crime in New York City fell even as a policing tactic was abandoned. Like many conservatives, I had grave concerns about curtailing the New York City Police Department's controversial tactic of stopping and frisking potential suspects or weapons. I was inclined to defer to the police when they protested that they needed the option to stop, question, and frisk New Yorkers on the mere reasonable suspicion of wrongdoing instead of probable cause that the targeted person had committed a crime. Restricting the tactic, I thought, will cause an uptick, maybe even a spike in crime rates. Mayor Bill de Blasio, who made ending stop and frisk the centerpiece of his successful 2013 campaign for mayor, struck me as a man who was cynically willing to tolerate an increase in crime if he thought it to his political advantage to amplify leftist voters' core belief that policing was out of control. Now, so far, I'm with him. Like, this actually makes sense. What he's saying, I think, is pretty much right. I don't know why he would go against his better judgment in this whole situation, but we're going to continue with the article and see what he says. Today in New York City, use of stop and frisk, which the department justified via the 1968 Terry versus Ohio Supreme Court ruling, has crashed. Yet the statistics are clear. Crime is lower than ever. It's possible that crime would be even lower had stop and frisk been retained, but that's moving the goalposts. I and others argued that crime would rise. Instead, it fell. We were wrong. Now, he pretty much said it right here. Maybe it would have gone even lower if he would have had stop and frisk. So, I mean, isn't the whole point to get crime down? If crime is decreased, maybe it would have decreased more with stop and frisk. Maybe there are other factors involved here other than stop and frisk. Him saying that lets me know that he thinks maybe that's a good crime fighting tactic. But I guess because it fell by an acceptable amount, an appropriate amount, then it's not really a big deal. I'm not really sure. Major crime in New York City has continued to decline almost across the board in the 4 years of the de Blasio administration to the lowest rate since New York City began keeping extensive records on crime in the early 1960s. Crime is literally off the charts, the low end of the charts. To compare today's crime rate to even that of 10 years ago is to observe a breathtaking decline. New York City saw a record low 333 homicides in 2014, the first year of the de Blasio administration, though that figure was slightly higher in 2015 and 2016, 352 and 335. Four of the least murderous years in New York City since 1960 have been in the de Blasio era. So are you trying to say that de Blasio is the reason why the crime is so low? Like, he came in and just cleaned it all up. We're not talking about Rudy Giuliani, who came in and transformed New York City from a wasteland into a place people really want to go, a tourist destination, an attraction all over the world. We're not going to talk about him. We're not going to give him any kind of credence in the situation. You just want to say that because homicide and crime was low, and I'll talk about why I'm using air quotes here in a little bit, just because it's happened under de Blasio, that means that it's his. I mean, come on, let's just pump our brakes and drive slow a little bit. Other crime statistics have largely followed suit, with the total number of major crimes down in 2017 by about 6% since 2016, which was itself a record low year. Now, my thing is this. How do we know that the crimes being down, the major crimes being down 6%, is not a result of any kind of book cooking? You know, I'll play some images of articles, some screenshots of articles on the screen before you. There's been a lot of book cooking going on all over the country, not just in New York, but everywhere. Baltimore, LA, Chicago, you name it. There's book cooking happening. And what I mean by that is crimes not really reported the way they should. Crimes are often reported as a lower offense, even though they're a higher offense. Now, prime example, you may have a serious issue with robbery, deadly weapon, knife crime, whatever. Those crimes may be reported as lesser offenses to get the overall violent crime rate down in a place. Okay, I'm not making it up. This has been reported. This has actually happened in many places. So it's not just me just talking. As of December 27th, New York City saw 286 homicides in 2017, down 12% from the previous year, itself a near record low. That is a rate of about 3 per 100,000 population. By contrast, Chicago's homicide rate for 2017 was about 24 per 100,000. The figure for Baltimore is about 56. There were more murder victims in Baltimore than in New York City in 2017, even though New York has nearly 14 times as many residents. That's very misleading because Baltimore, like a lot of the crime is centered within the city limits, not necessarily the surrounding area of the county. But New York City, you counting like different cities. You're counting, you know, Brooklyn, Bronx, Manhattan, Queens, etc. You're counting a larger area where crime is not really centered. So that's kind of a misleading statistic. Stop and frisk was deployed in New York City some 686,000 times at the peak in 2011, dropped sharply in 2012 and 2013, the last couple of years of the Mike Bloomberg administration, and plummeted to 12,000 incidents in 2016, according to an NYPD data tracked by the New York Civil Liberties Union. That's about a 98% reduction of the use of the tactic. De Blasio is not the primary reason for this reversal. Oh, you think? Okay, I'm glad you admitted that. The courts appeared to be on their way to killing stop and frisk on Fourth Amendment grounds before he even took office, as civil liberties advocates built a case that the reasonable suspicion standard seemed to have developed into a hunch is good enough. So it seems likely that the sharp declines that began under Bloomberg would have continued if Bloomberg had remained in office. Nevertheless, de Blasio was correct in saying the city could withstand a sharp decrease in stop and frisk, and he was right to draw attention to the social cost of the practice. More than 80% of those subjected to stop and frisk since the start of the Bloomberg administration were, according to NYPD, completely innocent. 80%, well, you still got 20% who were not innocent, so that's pretty high. That means hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers were unjustly subjected to embarrassment or even humiliation. It's possible there is some number fudging going on with the crime statistics. You don't say. You don't say. I'm glad that this person is being somewhat honest here. Kudos to them. But so far, there's only scattered anecdotal evidence of that. Any serious effort to charge today's cops with distorting the numbers would have to consider whether yesterday's cops did the same. Moreover, if anything, the Blasio era police have been more antagonistic to the mayor than in any previous administration, taking such unprecedented steps as turning their backs to him en masse at a funeral. Well, look, I mean, when they did that at the funeral, rest in peace to the person that died, they were in the right for doing that because right before the officer was killed, de Blasio, I'm talking about, had thrown the NYPD under the bus. And by doing that, you set an example to not respect police officers, to not really pay them any mind, to take their life as meaning less than what it means. And then like 3 or 4 days later, after his comments, you got what I think it was at least one officer that died, maybe 2 that died, that got shot and killed on the street. So let's just keep that in mind. But I digress. Police seem disinclined to do de Blasio any favors by giving him favorable crime statistics to brag about. New York City's mayor is a contemptible human being who marched in a parade headed by a terrorist, flouted the law in failing to turn over unused school space for high quality charters that serve as a lifeline out of the slums, and did favors for campaign fundraisers. But as de Blasio begins his second and final term as mayor, having been sworn in by the country's sole high-ranking socialist, Bernie Sanders, he's entitled to an I told you so moment on the issue that swept him into office. Now, stop and frisk. Okay, now he pretty much has said a lot of what I was thinking about here. First of all, we don't know whether stop and frisk declining has anything to do with the crime rate declining, or if the crime rate would have dropped even more had you still had it. Okay, maybe we have a record low homicide. Maybe we have like 100 less homicides if you had stop and frisk. Wouldn't that be better? I mean, 100 homicides less. Wouldn't that be fantastic? You're talking about crime just going all the way down. That'd be great. That'd make New York City more of a desirable place to be. Okay, which was something that's taken a long time to happen. Like I said, you had Giuliani coming there, and at that point in time, New York City was not necessarily a desirable place to be. A lot of crime, a lot of drugs, a lot of just illicit behavior that was happening all over the city. It's still happening to a certain extent now, but it's nowhere near the way it was. And I saw a comment here. I'm going to try to find it, but this comment pretty much sums up how I feel about this whole article. Okay, here we go. This is from my man, Bob D. Agostino, coming from New York, Westbury. Shout out to Westbury. He says, without stop and frisk and broken windows policing in the Giuliani and Bloomberg administrations, there would have been no hip Williamsburg and Bushwicks or other restored neighs. It has been said here, I think, that changes in socioeconomic levels in those areas reduce crime. No stop and frisk, these areas are not rehabilitated. Exactly. That right there pretty much sums it all up. This is how I think. This is how I feel about the situation. You had to have stop and frisk to clean these areas up. When Giuliani came in there, and then to a certain extent Bloomberg, but mostly Giuliani, they had these tactics to clean these areas up. The hipsters would not be in Brooklyn right now, or in Harlem, or in anywhere else in New York City that at one point had been very dangerous if it was not for stop and frisk. And then when you take out the people that were there who were causing a lot of problems. Oh, also gentrification in general, not just the policing, but gentrification, because when you have people that move in that feel safe or whatever, now you have the rent go up. Now you have the property value go up, and the people that were there living in poverty for the most part are going to be pushed out. When I was in Virginia, a lot of people that were down there were from New York. I'm talking like when I was a kid, even like 50% of my neighborhood was New Yorkers. And I'm in Virginia, Portsmouth, Virginia. Mostly everybody is like everybody and their mom was from New York. It got to the point where I used to hate when somebody would come from New York, because it's like, okay, I'm not trying to hear about you being from New York and you being cool. You down here with us now, so you just a guy from Virginia. You're not from New York anymore. Nothing against anybody from New York, but as a kid, I just didn't like when people try to like come down and be condescending to us in Virginia. It's like, you down here with us now. Hey, enjoy it or don't enjoy it. And I think that's kind of what people are feeling a little bit with people moving into their neighborhoods, but that's irrelevant to the point I'm making. My point is that the same people who were there years ago causing the problems, causing the mayhem, causing the mischief, the poor, the uneducated, the underemployed or unemployed are starting to be moved out of these areas. And you're implanting people that, the hipster kids that got plenty of money, these kids are not going to be causing the violence. These kids are going to take care of their neighborhood. These people, sometimes they're older people, actually, they're going to have more care for their neighborhood and not going to be engaging in crime and violence. Therefore, the crime is going to go down. That's natural. It's common sense. And then with more people that come in that care for their neighborhood, it makes it easier for the police to actually police in a not so hands-on way. So they don't have to do stop and frisk anymore. So to say that, okay, well, we were wrong about stop and frisk, that's not true. Stop and frisk, among other things, getting a violation for urinating in public and stuff like that, which is starting to decline now. You might see a spike in the homicide rate because of the things that were instituted under Giuliani are starting to be unraveled. Quality of life offenses, like I said, urinating on the floor, people sitting in the subway, different kind of ways, little small things that build up to big things. Okay. Once these violations are starting to not really be taken seriously, then you're going to start to see uptick in crime. That's how broken windows policing works. It does work. It is effective. It was effective to clean up New York City. and you're seeing the results right now, a lower crime rate, a lower homicide rate. That's what it is. So for this person who wrote this article on National Review to say that, oh, well, we were wrong, stop and frisk doesn't work, I think he is sadly mistaken. But what do you think? Do you think that stop and frisk is a good thing to have? Should we be doing that right now in modern society? Is it something that we really shouldn't be worried about? Is it unconstitutional? My freedom, my liberty, this, that, and the third? Or do you think we really need it? We need it in these places where you have a lot of violence, a lot of crime, a lot of homicide. If somebody was to say, hey, you know what? Your family members are in danger in the place where they live, so we're going to have stop and frisk on everybody just to make sure that your family members are safe. Would it be worth it? Because some people say, as I close, some people say that it's not worth relinquishing your liberty for safety. But what if it's you in that situation? It's easy to say that on the outside looking in, but it's very difficult to say that when you are on the inside looking out. And you're trying to keep safe. You're trying to keep yourself, your family, your kids, mom, dad, everybody safe. And people on the outside are saying, no, we don't want you to have auto tools available because I think that it would be unconstitutional. It wouldn't be fair to you. If you ask people in these areas where stop and frisk was heavily used, do you want it? I guarantee you most of them would say, yes, we do want it because it keeps us safer. But whatever your comments are, let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.